Sonic Adventure probably has to be one of the most divisive games ever created. It was Sonic's first crack at 3D and was almost like his answer to Mario 64. And a lot of people remember it fondly, while it also serves as a punching bag for the rest of the population. But you know what? None of that matters, because as the only intelligent person on the internet, it is my job to establish the correct opinion. There's a bunch of versions of this game, but for now let's focus on the original version. The game was released in 1998 in Japan and 99 in the West. Considering games like Banjo-Kazooie, Ocarina of Time, and Metal Gear Solid were some of the best looking titles that year, I gotta say, this looks incredibly good. Of course, it's in a league of its own because it's on Sega's next-gen Dreamcast. Sometimes Dreamcast is described and marketed as being the first 128-bit system. Unfortunately, by this time, I think most people were starting to realize that bits are not the be-all, end-all measure of power that they were made out to be. And even then, there is some debate over whether or not that was accurate anyway. In any case, the Dreamcast would only go on to sell 9 million units, which, you know, could have been worse. The story for Sonic Adventure is that Eggman is a dickhead and he's taking all the Chaos Emeralds so he can feed them to this guy named Chaos. The idea is that Chaos will work for him once he gets all the emeralds and will destroy Station Square so that he can build his own city on top of it. So it's up to Sonic and Tails to stop him.
All systems, full power!
I don't know if I ever said this before, but I always loved Eggman. He's probably one of my favorite video game villains ever made. He's just funny. Somehow he's a genius and a moron at the same time. Along the way, you meet all sorts of Sonic bitches, like Knuckles, Amy, and Big the Cat, played by John St. John, the same guy who voiced Duke Nukem. Can you believe that?
A Chrysler Town & Country was yours had you answered the phone and identified this voice. Mine. Guess who I am? Duke Nukem. That's right, you would have known. You would have won the car, but you're not there. Tough shit.
Froggy? I must say Froggy!
A lot of people make fun of the cutscenes and dialogue in this game, but honestly, I can forgive that. This was 1998, and even though Metal Gear Solid came out the same year and had amazing voice acting, it was most definitely the exception, not the rule. And lip-sync dialogue certainly wasn't a common thing, so shout out to this game for even attempting that. One great triumph of this game that I'll admit is the music. You have all sorts of awesome tunes. Some of this shit is stuff that I would literally put on my phone and listen to for fun. But let's talk about the game. The broad strokes gameplay can be described as Sonic running to the end of the level, killing bad guys, collecting shinies, and then dicking around in this hub world for a bit looking for the next level. The control for Sonic Adventure is weird. The first thing you do in this game is fight a very easy mini-boss, and before you can even get used to the controls, Sonic either outruns the camera or the camera outruns him. Somehow it feels slippery while somehow feeling stiff at the same time. It's not something that's easy to describe. It's something you can only really understand if you actually play the game yourself. It's hard to put into words. It's not some atrocious abomination, but it's just weird. And even after playing the game for several hours, I never quite felt like I got the hang of it. One annoying thing in Mario is how B is often an action button, but also interacts with people and picks things up. With the Dreamcast controller, you could have X to spin dash and B to talk to people. Instead, both B and X spin dash, and both B and X talk to people. Why? What possible reason could you have to do that? The context-sensitive button thing in other games was intended to compensate a lack of available buttons for different actions, but here, you have enough buttons to have a dedicated button for both of these actions, so all this achieves is that sometimes when you try to talk to someone or pick something up, you just spin dash and fly 7 feet in one direction. Bravo, what an achievement. Sonic Adventure has often been criticized for having a lot of glitches, and while it's true that the extent of these glitches are often slightly exaggerated, This doesn't come from nowhere. Now, a lot of people will point out that Mario 64 has a shitload of glitches too, which is absolutely true. There are some invisible walls which make me very angry. There's that one glitch where you die for basically no logical reason, like I don't know what the fuck happened here. But here's the difference. The grand majority of these are very specific incidents. For the apeshit speedrunning glitches like BLJ and skipping the endless staircase, you have to perform the glitches and you have to practice in order to do so. With Sonic Adventure, you have to practice in order to avoid the glitches because they're largely unpredictable. Take this loop right here. I understand now that you just have to push forward, but that's not intuitive because the camera's over here. When you're looking at the loop going left and right, pushing up on the control stick is not intuitive. So I fell off the first time, naturally, and I tried to get back into it, and yeah, that's Sonic Adventure. To be honest, the whole game feels unintuitive. Remember, this is Sonic the Hedgehog, the fastest being in the universe. But the game is constantly forcing you to be slow and careful and precise so you don't die. He outruns the camera, sometimes the camera outruns him, he clips through geometry, he just has a bad time. This part is my favorite. You have to climb on these ladders like monkey bars and all this shit keeps flying at you from above and you can't see where it's coming from because the camera won't let you. It's almost like playing a psychological horror game, except the game's engine is the monster. You're always on the edge of your seat, expecting the camera to instantaneously jump to an awkward perspective and disorient you, which in this game is deadly. Becoming disoriented for even a split second can throw you off a cliff. You don't know when it's gonna happen, but you know it will, and just because it's not happening right this second does not mean that you can get comfortable. Yes, speedy shoes. Now I can run through the rings. Or not. I was stuck on this puzzle for like half an hour. It's horse shit because the ring trail stops right before you get to the actual platform and you have to jump over the rail, grappling with the aids camera at the same time, all before the stupid ass door closes. It felt like a fucking tease. I was pissed. There was also this degenerate cannon part. That was annoying. Like, who the fuck made this game? Jimmy McShitdick from Manitoba? Navigation can also be a bitch sometimes. In order to figure out where to go next, these little red orbs tell you a hint, which is nice. They can be a little vague, and sometimes they leave you running around in some general area trying to figure out where the fuck to go next, until you run into a cutscene which usually explains everything. It isn't cryptic in any way, but it does slow down the pacing of the game sometimes. Isn't that the point of Sonic? To go fast? That's the paradox of Sonic Adventure. Traveling around the hub world looking for where to go makes you feel trapped, but in the actual levels, Sonic is so fast that the game can't contain him at all. The tricky part of judging this game is that I can't tell if it's flawed at a fundamental level, or if it just requires a level of polish that isn't there. Again, look at Mario. If you look at the big boy 3D Mario games, there are only 5 of them across 24 years. Or 7 if you really want to count 3D Land and 3D World. That's because they tweaked these things until they feel just right and they work well enough. There are cracks in the design for sure, but at a fundamental level, these games are still intuitive and work as intended. To compare it to something a little more timely, Mario 64 took 2 years to develop. Sonic Adventure was made in the span of 10 months. And since then, there have been more than 10 3D Sonic games, and while many of them are certainly better than Sonic Adventure, they still never feel as polished or refined as Mario. I don't think it's that unfair to compare the two series either. I mean, Sonic's entire reason for existing is to be the antithesis of Mario. Mario is a wholesome and folksy character like Mickey Mouse, so Sega creates this unruly teenage hedgehog who rides snowboards, eats chili dogs, and makes fun of fat people like Eggman.
Look, it's a giant talking egg! Silence!
It was the 90s, and back then, Mario vs. Sonic was considered an actual debate worth having, and I feel that for this reason, it invites the comparison. I have to be honest with you, and I'm gonna say something that I'm probably not allowed to say, but I don't like this. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know a lot of people love this game, and I see people who think the haters are just people who never played it or watch too much Game Grumps, but I'm just being real with you. Like, it's not some degenerate abomination of the video game medium, like it's fun sometimes, but all I keep thinking about as I'm playing it is what kind of janky nonsense it's gonna pull on me next. Playing this game is just like walking on eggshells. It's like Death Stranding, but faster, and none of it feels intentional. It feels like an oversight. And this isn't some kind of weirdo conspiracy either. I don't gain anything from saying Sonic is bad and Mario is good. That's just how I feel. In my experience, this shit just doesn't work the way it's probably supposed to. Many people play these games with zero hassle at all, which perplexes me. I mean, it's not like I'm generally bad at video games. I mean, I beat Doom Eternal on the hardest difficulty, I got the Platinum Trophy in MGS4 and 5, I got to level 7 in Battletoads once, so that can't be it. I just can't get the hang of this game. I almost wonder if it's some kind of curse, like a certain percentage of the population is cursed by the soul of a deceased Sega employee who makes the game fuck with their heads. Or maybe people who just like Sonic a lot in the first place are just more dedicated and willing to excuse certain things. In any case, as a result of all of this, I started to ask myself if I was just playing the game wrong, and it turns out that yes, I was. You see, the winning strategy to playing Sonic Adventure is to throw the Dreamcast in the garbage and play the director's cut version that I got for $1 on Steam. When compared to the original version, Sonic Adventure DX has the distinct advantage of being a functional video game. The camera is less of an abomination, the controls feel more responsive and accurate, this shitty ring puzzle actually works the way it was probably intended to. I have to admit, they really did it. They transformed Sonic Adventure into a structurally sound piece of entertainment. There are still broken moments in here. I don't think the flying stage is really working the way it's supposed to because the shit just flies all over the screen at light speed. But yeah, overall, it works. Surprisingly, a lot of Sonic fans actually strongly dislike this version of the game, which is bizarre to me. At that point, I had to wonder if Sonic fans just genuinely enjoy broken video games. Alright, well no, that's not the reason. Apparently this version made a few changes they didn't like, certain aesthetic differences like lighting and texturing among other things. I can definitely sympathize with that. I hate how Paper Mario has this dumb fuck white outline around him now. In the case of Sonic Adventure, there are mods to revert it back to how it was in the original version, but I personally don't have any real attachment to the original's aesthetic. Well, not enough to the point that I really cared about the differences between the two. When the game is heavily gameplay focused, I'm much more of a function over fashion kind of guy. In any case, yeah, it works. But is it actually good now? Kinda. I can't say that it's the most fun game in the world, but it's definitely cool. The scenery is pretty neat, it can be very atmospheric at times, and it's got a lot of simple pleasures. Those parts where you're just going fast the way God intended, those are cool. The trampolines, the jumping pads, those are fun as hell. Without all the technical problems, the game is now pretty easy. It has some challenging parts, but it's mostly pretty basic stuff. It always feels kinda sad when you discover that most of the challenge in a game was the direct result of the game being dysfunctional. Without the jankiness, Sonic Adventure is like a patient cakewalk with occasional difficulty spikes. Nevertheless, with this less broken version, I feel that I turned around to this game somewhat. I don't love it, but I can now appreciate what this game managed to do much more. I can now enjoy the actually fun parts, like the casino level. That's pretty cool. I even got into the Chow Garden, which I never thought I'd do. Just look at them. Cute little fuckers, am I right? I think one of the coolest things this game did was give you the ability to play as 6 different characters through the same story. The gameplay is different for each character. There's Tails, who has a double jump and races Sonic. Knuckles glides through the air searching for the pieces of the Master Emerald. Big the cat. Gamma is a robot who betrays his programming out of some self-aware sense of compassion. Amy has a hammer and plays whack-a-mole because Eggman told her to. It's actually a pretty innovative thing that they did here. They're all pieces of the same plot, and you can't get the full scope of the story unless you play through all their sides of it. I'm not going to pretend that the story is riveting in any way, but the way it's told is actually really cool. At the same time, I don't find any of these modes particularly fun though. They are less janky because they're not as fast as Sonic, they work the way they're supposed to for the most part, but the fundamentals for each character just kind of feel basic and shallow. It's cool for what it is, but it doesn't really hook me. And that's probably the best way I can describe Sonic Adventure. It's cool, but I don't really like it. Well, anyway, that's my take on Sonic Adventure. I'm sorry it didn't sweep me off my feet. I guess I can't judge people for liking this game. I think Earthworm Jim 3D is okay, so whatever. What I can judge people for, however, is writing off people's criticisms of this game. Way too often, I've seen people just straight up ignore criticisms of this game and not even consider for a second that the people making those criticisms might have a point. Not everybody does this, but enough people have to the point that I noticed it. You have to understand that even if people make exaggerations, that they're often actually based on something. They're not just pulling things out of their ass. People have told me that Mario Sunshine is a buggy mess. I don't agree with it at all, but I understand where they're coming from and why they think that way. And deep down, I'm sure that those that like Sonic Adventure know where I'm coming from too. And when we all understand where everyone else is coming from, we will ascend to a more civil and enlightened society. We will usher in a new renaissance of video game criticism, where people think critically about each other's thoughts and opinions and don't just discard them out of fear or anger.
I will call it Baneland, and I will rule it all.